Hi everyone. So in this video what we're going to do is we're going to integrate a Wwise project into a Unity project. And so we start by having a couple of different things. One thing that you'll need is you'll need a Wwise project where you built events and a sound bank, and then you'll also need the standard assets package. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with Unity by creating a very simple Unity framework, and then we're going to integrate the Wwise project into that Unity framework. So I have opened up Unity. I'm going to put this new Unity project on my desktop. I'm going to call it Unity Wwise Integration. I'm going to make it a 3D project, and I'm going to create the project. In the Unity project itself, we're going to just create a very small, simple framework, and then we're going to do the integration. Then we're going to come back to Unity and show how to connect it all together. So here we have our project, and what I'm going to do is create just one simple object. I'm going to create a plane in our scene, and I'm going to make our plane a little bigger by changing the scale of the x-axis to 10 and the z-axis to 10. I'm going to save our sample scene that we have, which is located in the scenes folder. And that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to quit out of Unity now. And now what I'm going to do is bring in the Wwise libraries so that Wwise can run in Unity. Now, in order to do that, I have to open up the Wwise launcher. The Wwise launcher is now the place we go to actually integrate our materials. So if we click on the Unity tab, it will load up the most recent Unity projects, and we'll see it right there. Before we integrate, though, what we want to make sure is that we will have the correct reference. So we see on our desktop the Unity Wwise integration, which is where I put it. Here's my Wwise branching project. You can use whatever Wwise project that you have as long as it has some events in it and it has a sound bank built. Make sure to drag that project into that Wwise Unity integration project, because the Unity project, we want to keep track of where it is. Unity wants to keep track and know where that is. So if you move around this folder, you want the Wwise project to move around with it. So I just put it in the top level of my Unity project folder. So now we go back to the Wwise launcher. We're on the Unity tab, and then we integrate Wwise into the project. And what it's going to do is it's going to bring up some information here with regards to how do you want to integrate these things together? How do you want to add Wwise to this project? And essentially what it's going to do is it's going to pull down libraries off the internet based on what versions that you have and integrate it into that Unity package. So over here, the deployment packages, I'm going to pick, Apple, Mac OS, and Microsoft Windows as my two primary deployment packages or platforms. Then I have to choose the Wwise project path. Now remember, we move the Wwise project into our Unity folder. So if you leave this blank, it creates a brand new Unity project, and then the project will be referencing this empty Wwise project. So you have to be careful. Make sure to enter in the Wwise project path here. So that's what I'll do. I'll browse, I'll go to my desktop, and I'll see that I have my Unity Wwise integration. That's the Unity project. And then this is my Wwise branching project. And then I'll choose the project file here. The next thing that I'll have to do is I have to choose which version of Unity that I'm using. So you might have multiple versions of Unity on your machine. I'm going to go to my applications folder and choose my version of Unity that I'm using. And then it gives you an option to install files directly into the project or to install it into a copy and then apply changes if successful. This makes sure that it does the integration properly. So let's integrate it. So this is where it's downloading the latest versions off of Audio Kinetic site. Those libraries are now being integrated and unpacked and installed right into the Unity folder, my Unity project folder. And we'll be able to see that in just a minute. So let us finish kind of waiting for this to finish up here, and then we'll look at what our Unity project looks like here. In fact, I can kind of start to see what it's doing is in the assets folder. Actually, it hasn't done it quite yet. What it's going to do is add a bunch of Audio Kinetic libraries so that Unity understands how Wwise works, and that it will be able to use and load up a Wwise project with inside of it. And we wait a little bit longer. Oh, now it merged the working copy, and you can see that it added a Wwise folder inside the assets folder, and it completed successfully. Okay, so now I can quit out of the Wwise launcher, and I can look at these folders, although it won't mean a whole lot to me right now. You won't be messing around too much with the Wwise folders directly. You'll be working with the Wwise project, which we put at the top level of the Wwise Unity integration. It also added two other zip files here, which are the Mac and Windows source Wwise packages for Unity. Again, you don't have to worry about any of that. Any changes that you're going to make in your Wwise project folder. All right, so let's go back to Unity. Let's open it up. You have to have Unity closed when you do that. It will ask you to close if you have forgotten. All right, so now I have my latest project here, Unity Wwise integration. I'm going to load it back up. It has to recompile the assets, the new assets that it added. And now we have a brand new tab here called Wwise Picker. If you don't see the Wwise Picker tab, there's a way to kind of get to that by going up to the window menu and choosing Wwise Picker, and then it will show up. And I should see my entire project here with my events. So these are the events that I set up earlier in my Wwise branching project. And now I can see them in here. And so I have a start game event, and then I set my state to explore and things like that. And we can actually drag these into the scene, and we're going to do that in a minute. The other thing that we want to do now is we want to be able to walk around on this plane that I've created. So let's go ahead and import a custom package. And this is, I'll give you the link for this. This is the standard assets Unity package. I've just updated it a little bit so the first person camera works right away. So I'll import that package of material. Again, what that's doing in my project, I guess I can't click it quite yet. In my project folder, in the assets folder, it's importing a bunch of assets that we can use within our project that are pre-generated. And so we don't have to do all the work of creating a first-person controller from scratch. And that's what we're doing now. And after this imports, what we'll do is we'll drag that first-person controller out to our scene so we can walk around. And then we'll create several basic 3D objects in the world which will collide with. And when we collide with them, they'll trigger these Wwise events down here. So we'll create one for a start game, and we'll create one for a set state explore, and it will allow us to start playing our Wwise project within Unity. And we wait just a little bit longer for it to finish processing these assets. Looking at our Wwise project here, the events, in order to kind of review that process, in Wwise itself, you'll have to have a project, you'll have to create those events, you'll have to attach those events to different objects. For instance, start game starts a switch container, and then set state explore switches the default state of none to explore. And all of those have been added to a sound bank, which I then generated. You can see here that if I have Wwise open at the same time, that I can generate my sound banks within the project itself, which is kind of great. You can modify, make changes, generate your sound banks, and get changes right away. Now, if for some reason you did not see the Wwise Picker, there are some settings here. If you type in Wwise and go to the Wwise settings, it's in the Edit menu on a Mac. Wwise settings, if for some reason your Wwise project gets lost, Unity doesn't recognize where your project is, what you can do is you can actually set your project path up here and also set your Wwise application up here as well. One of the other things that Wwise did when we did the integration was it added this Wwise Global here. The Wwise Global basically initializes the scene and prepares it to use Wwise within the scene. So I'm going to hit save. The other thing it might do is it might add a Wwise listener to our scene. We're going to take a look at that in a minute. First thing that we want to do though is we want to go ahead and go to the project tab, and we want to go into standard assets. That's the folder we just imported. Go into characters, first person controller or first person character, prefabs, and then we're going to add our first person controller, FPS controller to the scene. So this is a little object that has some scripts on it that allow us to move around. It also has a camera on it, so we can delete our other camera, our other main camera, because now we have a new sort of main camera here. And if I hit play, then I should be able to walk around. All right, I can walk around and that's good. And I'm going to hit pause for a second. Okay, in this next part, what we're going to do is we're going to create some more game objects. We're just going to create 2 game objects. We're going to create a cube, put it in front of the character, and then what we're going to do is we're going to create a sphere. And so we'll create another 3D object. Oops. Sphere. And I'm going to move them so they're kind of far apart from one another. We want to make these into triggers. So select the cube, and then in the box collider, hit is trigger, and also do that for the sphere as well. And that will allow us to use them as triggers, which means that instead of colliding with them, we'll actually kind of fire an event in the background. So you can kind of walk through them. So if I hit play right now, we'll be able to walk through them. So I'll kind of be able to walk through that. And when I walk through it, when I sort of collide with it, what it will do is it will allow us to kind of trigger a script of some sort. Because these are a little hard to see based on where the directional light is, I can actually move the directional light so the shadows move if I want to. Right now I'm sort of just going to leave that. But let's say like this box didn't show up very well. Let's just go ahead and in the assets folder create a new material. So we create, and we're going to add a material. And what I can do with this material is set the color. So I'm going to set the color here to red. So I have a red material, and then I can actually add that to that box so it's a little easier to see the cube. I can go up here and just drop it on the cube and the sphere, and now I have 2 red objects, so they're a little bit easier to see in our world. Alright, we are very close now. So what I'm going to do is go to our Wwise Picker, and I'm going to start with the cube, and I'm going to drag start game up to my cube. And what that's going to add to the cube is it's going to add some new information. It's adding a AK script, and AK stands for audio kinetic. And I want on this, on the trigger, I want to make sure that basically this is when it happens. Right now it's happening on start. So it's going to play my start game event on the start of the cube, which I don't want. I want to change it to nothing first and then change it over to trigger enter. Okay, and I'm going to do kind of the same thing with the sphere. I'm going to drag up set state explore to my sphere, and instead of triggering it on the start, I'm going to switch it to nothing first and then switch it to AK trigger enter, audio kinetic trigger enter. Okay, now we're almost ready. The one thing that we've forgotten to do is that we need to add a sound bank to our world. So the sound bank doesn't get added automatically. We actually have to load the sound bank before anything starts to happen. So what we'll do is we'll actually go over to, we'll drag that up to our Wwise global. And now on our Wwise global, we'll set this to start. So it's going to load our bank on start and unload it when the world gets destroyed. So now if I hit play, what we should hear is we should hear nothing because we haven't triggered any events yet. And even when I pass through this cube, all I'm doing is starting the switch. But when I pass through this one, what it's going to do is set it from none to explore, and we should hear music at that point. So if I look at my events again, my start game, all it's doing is starting in kind of an empty switch. And then when we set state explore, then we're actually starting a playlist within that switch. Remember that events are containers of multiple actions, which could include play, they could include set a state or set a trigger, or all of those at once. And so this gives you a little bit of a framework to finish out the rest of your project where you're adding other geometric shapes and changing to your other states that you have in your project, and then also maybe firing some triggers as well. Let me know if you have any questions, and don't forget to save your scene at the end of all that. Good luck.